The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hi, welcome to The Ring and All of the Sports. My name is Leo Connors and I'm your host. Who were some of your favorites? Was Chief J obviously one of your favorites?
Chief J was one of my favorites. Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas.
Yep.
I wasn't a big fan of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
He just seemed kind of corny to me.
Right.
But I was definitely Paul Orndorff was excellent. King Kong Bundy, who I got to meet later on.
He did a lot of indies in New England, huh?
He did.
Yeah.
He did. I actually met him in Maryland.
Okay.
But Ken Patera, I'm trying to think of all the guys. Ivan Putski was huge to me.
Yeah.
First show I ever went to was at the Lowell Auditorium.
Yep.
Main event was Morocco versus Pedro Morales.
Oh, wow.
So that was a great show to be at.
Yeah. I might have been there that night too. I saw them wrestle in Lowell. That's where I grew up in Lowell.
Yeah.
So you just answered the next question, which was how old were you when you wanted to be a wrestler? You were 9. All right. So who trained you?
That's a long story.
Yes. Well, this is what I like about it. Sorry, guys. That's what I like about it because, like I said, I listened to the podcast. I had no idea that you first went to
the Monster Factory in New Jersey, right? When I was 18, literally right out of high school, maybe 2 weeks after graduation. I went to the Monster Factory, and my mom is a reporter, so she taught me to take a lot of notes on everything and ask a lot of questions. So I had gone to the school and met with him, Larry Sharp, who was the owner and the head trainer there at the time, and got to sit down with him and ask him a few questions. And I was asking him, why is your school better than other schools?
Right.
Which I think is a legitimate question.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he basically said, why are you asking me all these bleeping questions? Do you want to be a wrestler or not?
Right.
I said, well, yeah, I do. He goes, well, it's $1,500. That's all I got. That's all I got to say.
All he wanted was the money. Huh?
All he wanted was the money.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I need to think about it because $1,500 is a lot of money for an 18-year-old kid.
Right.
And I went and he said, well, watch the training and see what you think. And I had gone, sat close to the ring, and there was a guy named Johnny Hotbody who worked in ECW very early on. And I knew who he was just from the indie scene.
Right.
I was big into the indies. And he said, hey, kid, come on, get in the ring. We'll show you a few things. And I just from the look on his face and the look of the other boys that were in the ring, I knew I was in trouble. So I said, I'll just watch you guys.
Right.
I'll just watch you guys for this time.
Do you remember anyone that was in the ring that day? That when you were watching, like any of the students that were in the ring?
I remember one because, outside John Hotbody, I remember one because after we watched the training, we went over to Wendy's.
Okay.
To me and my mom and to get food. And this wrestler called, his work name was Budlicious. Budlicious.
Yeah.
And I managed to see him work a few times. He was actually pretty good.
Nice.
But he came and he apologized for Larry.
Right.
He said Larry is a real kind of, a-hole.
Yeah.
And doesn't put up with anybody's crap at all and doesn't like to answer a lot of questions. So he said, don't let that fool you.
Right.
But the whole situation kind of intimidated me to do the business.
Right.
So I gave it up for a while.
Yeah. Right.
But then when I was 21, I went to an AWF show, which is they tried to compete with Vince.
Oh, was that the one they used to do it in rounds?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So they were trying to compete with Vince, and I went to the show, and I happened to be sitting next to a guy who worked for Yankee Pro, was a ring announcer for Yankee Pro. And he said, I told him, I said, I really want to do this. He said, well, here's my card. Take my card and call Joe Eugenio, who was in charge of Yankee Pro at the time.
Right.
And see if we could hook you up. So I called Joe and got me, and he said, yeah, come on down. You'll meet the trainer. Trainer's name was Gino Caruso.
Yep.
He was really good.
Yeah.
but never, he was a small guy. He was
Right.
maybe 5'6" and 180 pounds.
Yeah, because there are two Gino Carusos out
Right.
there. One's in New Jersey. I actually did a catering job at his school
Right.
years ago. But
Yeah. This was another Gino
Right.
Caruso. So I wondered what they were going to charge because I'm like, okay, well, I heard $1,500
Right.
a couple of years ago. And he said, oh, just pay me your dues of $40 a month and I'll train you.
Wow.
And I said, can't beat that.
Yeah, it's a lot better than $1,500.
Exactly.
Wow. Now, when you train, was there anybody that we might know that was in that class when you were training with Gino? With Gino.
Yeah, Bob Evans was in the class. Wow. I'm trying to think. A lot of the Yankee Pro guys were there. Derek Denali, I'm not sure if you know him.
Yep.
He wrestled as the Reverend. And,
Yeah, Reverend Redemption.
Yeah, Reverend Redemption.
Yep. He's on the name game.
Yeah. Oh, he is?
Yep.
Oh, okay. There were a lot of guys I don't remember,
Right.
unfortunately. Jungle Warrior was another one who I had my first match with.
Oh, nice.
My first one-on-one match.
Right.
But there were a lot of young guys there.
Nice. All right. So you just said your first one-on-one match. So I did hear this. You did a battle royal first, and
did do a
then
battle
you
royal.
had your first match.
Right.
Now, what city was that first match in? Not the battle royal, but was it the same night? Did you
No,
do
no.
the battle royal then?
No.
Okay.
Did Battle Royal by itself.
Okay.
First match was in New Bedford. They Yankee Pro, and I think they still use it at Top Rope. I think they still use the building.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, that is true. I think he knew I held back.
Yeah.
We were asked by the promoter to take care of a young kid who was kind of getting too big for his britches.
Right.
Kid had been in the business for maybe 6 months at the time and started thinking he was a big timer. So we went out. I definitely laid some stuff in on him, try to
Right.
get the message across to him. But Aaron had held him and was waiting for me to kick him. I hit the ropes and I just went, you know what? This kid is just stupid. He's not me.
Right.
So I did pull back on that kick. So Aaron is correct.
Well, he has a follow-up question. Do you believe the guy actually learned his lesson?
At the time, no. But over maybe the next year, I think
Yeah.
he figured it out.
Good. All right. Scott King wants to know, who was your favorite royal brother and why wasn't it me, he says. I can't believe that it's not him.
I can't believe it's not him either. I only had one royal brother.
Did you really?
Yeah.
So, Scott, see that? It is you.
Yeah, Scott and I teamed late 92 into early 93.
Now, was that an EWA?
No, that was for a company called Coastal Pro Wrestling, which I
okay.
talked
Yep.
about on the
Yep.
podcast. But he taught me a lot. I mean, he had only been in the business maybe a year longer than me.
Right.
But he was so much further advanced than I was that most of the time I was watching him in the tag team matches,
Yeah, he was a really good worker, too.
Very
He
good.
was. All right. I don't know if you know, you must know this guy. Referee Richard Lannon.
Oh, boy, do I. Yes.
I'm related to Rich. The
you
mother
are?
of my older kids is his first cousin. I guess I'm not related to him, but my family is.
Right.
All right. He says, what was it like fighting Nails? Because it must have been a fight.
It is, and it's on YouTube, so you can look for Johnny Royal versus Nails. I had been in the business maybe a year and some change,
Right.
So I wasn't really familiar with anything. And Nails, I had heard that Nails beat up Vince McMahon,
Yeah. And he's a scary looking dude.
and he's a scary looking guy. He is, but nicest guy I've ever met.
That's good.
I asked him. I said, "Hey, I throw a really good drop kick. Can I do that on you?" He's like, "Of course."
Nice.
I said, "What else do you want to do?" He said, "I will just call it out there." So I did. You saw the match. I did
Yep.
the drop kick as best I could to get up. He's like 6'9".
Yeah, he's a
I got up as high as I could.
Yep.
And he just took over on me from there and
Now,
worked me over.
Did he call the whole match, or were you guys both calling spots? Just curious.
Believe it or not, we didn't call an absolute thing. Nothing.
Just nothing at all.
Nothing you saw was called. It was all he trusted me
Right.
that I knew enough what I was doing to follow him and do what he wanted me to.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's cool to have a good story about that because I would have just assumed because of how scary he looks and because, like you said, how he punched Vince McMahon in the face,
Right.
that he would have been like not a guy you wouldn't want to wrestle.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's kind of cool to hear that he
Exactly.
was cool. All right, I got 4 questions from your good friend Sonny Goodspeed. They're good. Was there anybody in your class that went on to either local or bigger? Was there anybody in his class that went on to either local or bigger success? Any of your classes you were in? Did anybody go on to big success? Locally or nationally?
Steve Bradley was probably the biggest one.
Yeah.
Who got signed,
Right.
very early on, maybe
so
98. And he was tremendous. I mean, I got to work with him a lot
Right.
from like 94 to 96. I spent a lot of time with him, actually.
Right.
But he just blossomed. He was a kid
Yeah.
who ran a wrestling federation called Kids Wrestling Federation, and up in New Hampshire. And he came to Jeff Costa one day and said, "I want to train for real." He came in and he picked up on everything really quickly. I mean, he really was a student of the game, and he watched and learned and practiced his craft. And he was just a tremendous, tremendous worker.
And it was great to see when Kurt Angle got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, how he mentioned Steve.
Yeah.
Without Steve, he wouldn't have learned as much and all. That was just great.
Yeah.
And knowing what happened with Steve, it was just as a fan of New England wrestling, really made me feel good even,
Right.
to know that they talked, Kurt acknowledged him. Do you have a favorite match that you have been in? Any match that stands out like, this is my favorite?
I do. I have a match, and Sonny, I'm going to put you over.
All right.
Match was with Sonny Goodspeed down in someplace in Rhode Island.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure where the town was. I don't remember. But it was at a high school, and there were maybe 300 high school kids there. A lot of them were skaters.
Yep.
So they had brought skateboards with them, and Sonny was working heel. Sonny went out and riled them up like nothing I've ever seen.
Right.
I have to put him over. He is one of the best at getting people mad.
Oh, yeah.
He had them all riled up, and for a good maybe 6 or 7 minutes.
Right.
So I finally get introduced. I go out, and I say one thing. I turn to the crowd and I go, "Skaters rule," and the crowd went ballistic.
Right.
So we're playing back and forth for another couple of minutes, and the promoter, Cody Boynes, I don't know if you know Cody.
Yeah, I know who he is.
No, who he is. Yeah.
Yes.
He was getting really angry because he had only given us like 8 to 10 minutes, and we were already at like 8.
Right.
And we hadn't even started yet. So Sonny, we got close enough to each other where we could talk it, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to go back there. Just roll me up."
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay." So he goes to the corner and starts yelling at people again. And I just pick and roll them up. 1, 2, 3. And the crowd, you would have thought it was Hulk Hogan winning.
That's awesome.
It was, and that really, and doing nothing in the match. That was my favorite match because of the crowd interaction,
That's awesome. How about, do you have a favorite match not including you? I guess that would be anything, whether it was on, TV wrestling, or local.
Right. Of course, everybody mentioned Savage and Steamboat, and I thought that was a great match.
That was a great match. It was.
But for me, one of the best matches I ever saw was Steve Austin. Yeah, Steve Austin and Bret Hart, WrestleMania 13.
Was that in Boston?
The double turn, right?
Boston, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great
The double
match.
turn. It was amazing.
Austin passed out and the sharpshooter, correct?
And the sharpshooter, right?
That match was really good. There's been so many great matches, but you're right though. Steamboat and Savage was also a great match. When you wrestled, did you prefer working babyface or heel?
Well, I had always, for the first maybe 5 years, I had always worked babyface.
Right.
And I was enjoying it, but I always did. When you're a babyface, you always want to be a heel, and when you're a heel, you always want to be a babyface. So, but I had wanted to turn heel for a while, and Jeff Costa finally let me turn heel. We did a gimmick. Me and my tag team partner, Rip Morrison,
Yes.
did a gimmick called the Siamese Twins.
Yes.
Siamese Twins was the funniest thing I've ever been involved with. Sonny's wife, Betty, sewed 2 sweatshirts together so we could fit into it together. We both wore black pants and black boots. Jeff said, "We need to turn the lights down low because the Siamese Twins are sensitive to light. So they can't work with the lights being so high." So Jeff turned the lights down, and we worked with Loverboy Dave Barron and somebody else, I can't remember who. But we tried to do a backdrop to Dave.
Yeah.
And it was the sickest backdrop I've ever seen because we almost killed him. Because trying to do it with one arm inside a sweatshirt.
Right.
You know. But the gimmick is at the end of the match, I was going to just turn on Rip and come out. So I come out and I get out of the sweatshirt and everybody realizes it's us now. And I just beat up Rip for a while. And then I got to turn heel and I ended up teaming with Bob Evans for a while. And we did some matches with Bob Evans and Rip Morrison, Maverick Wild. Gino Caruso actually came up and did a show with us too. So that turned out to be great. I loved working heel.
Right. Now, you're good friends with Bob.
Oh, yeah.
And Bob has trained a lot of guys over
has.
the past, 20 years, let's say?
Yeah.
Right? He's trained, I'd say 40% of the guys have probably at least trained a little bit with him.
Right.
I mean, he's been around a long time, and he's still doing things. Is he still working for ROH a little?
I don't believe so.
Okay. But I know he's still doing the tag team, Tough Guy Inc. with Timmy Hughes, right?
With Tim Hughes, right.
Yeah, it's a good tag team, too.
Yes.
I like Bob. I think he's a great guy. I know he's a controversial guy.
He is controversial.
But like I said, I like him. He's a great guy. Speaking of controversial guys, on the podcast with Julian and Tarzan, I had no idea that you were the reason Skunk O'Malley got in the wrestling business. If you guys don't know Skunk O'Malley, ask everybody else. Look it up online. But Johnny's going to tell you a few things about him now.
I'll even tell you his name so you can look it up. It's Chris Antel. And Chris Antel worked at Teradyne, company called Teradyne, with my father.
Okay.
I forget what he was doing there. It was something he was doing there. But he was talking to my dad, and my dad said, he said, "Oh, I love professional wrestling. I really would like to do it."
Right.
And Chris was an older guy. He's probably a good 10 years older than me, and I'm 49 now. So he's probably at least 60 now.
Right.
But he said, "I always wanted to do it." My dad said, "Well, it just so happens that my son's a pro wrestler too." This was 95, 96, somewhere around there. So my dad gave him my phone number. I talked to the guy. He sounded normal on the phone.
Right.
He sounded like an excited older guy.
Yep.
Like, I'm just interested in doing this, and I'm going to try, and I'll give my best. So I give him Jeff Costa's phone number. He calls Jeff Costa. Now, I'm hearing this from Jeff after the fact. He calls Jeff and says, Jeff says, "What can I do for you?" And he says, "It's not what you can do for me. It's what I can do for you." And Jeff just hung up on him.
Did he?
Yeah.
I wonder how he ended up getting involved with Chaotic. Do you know how he did that?
I really don't. Once he left Jeff Costa's area, I lost contact with him for a while.
Now, when Jeff hung up on him, but didn't he work for Jeff a little bit too?
Oh yeah. Oh no, he came and trained with us. Yeah, he ended up calling Jeff back, and Jeff, Jeff
put him in his place.
Well, put him in his place and said, "Well, I can make money off the guy.
Right.
I'll take him in," and it was probably the worst mistake, and I got rasped for it. Something fierce.
Yeah.
Because Jeff told everybody that I was the one responsible for bringing this guy in. And I don't know. Like I said, when I first talked to him, he was normal on the phone. Right. He gets to school and he's putting on a persona.
Yep.
And trying to work everybody and trying to think that, automatically thinks that he's great in the ring.
Oh, yeah. I can picture that.
And he's terrible. Terrible.
Mav wanted to kill him a few times.
Mav really wanted to kill him.
There's so many stories been told, and I can't remember every one of them. But someone stopped him, and he was mad at that person for stopping him from killing the skunk one night.
Well, I almost killed the skunk one night.
Did you really?
So the match that I'm talking about was me, and I was working with this kid, Matt Bonnell. His name is Matt Bonnell, but he was working as Slash.
Yeah, I remember Slash.
Slash, yep. So we were working the match, and Skunk is just being an annoying mother.
Yeah.
And talking and chanting weird things and not making any sense. And Matt said, "You know what? Let's go outside the ring and you throw me into him." And so I said, "You know what? That's a great idea." So we go outside, we fight a little bit outside, and we come over to where Skunk is. And I just hauled off and threw Matt as hard as I could. I pushed him as hard as I could. And unfortunately, he took out 3 rows with him. But he definitely landed first on the skunk.
Nice.
And Skunk never learned his lesson. Never.
Really?
I mean, we used to beat him in class a lot. And he really would never get it. He would constantly be an annoyance.
Yeah. That is crazy. But yeah, so I guess that's enough on the skunk, I guess, right?
Yeah.
All right. I do want to bring up another guy I know you had matches with, and this is for no heat, okay, or anything, Joel. The guy asked me a long time ago why I didn't bring him up. A lot of guys that I had on the show are from around here.
Right.
They never really wrestled with them. And Joel Davis, guy that was really mad at me and Sonny, wanted to challenge us to a 2-on-1 fight.
Right.
And I think that's crazy to try. Anybody that wants to fight Sonny, anyways, by himself.
Right.
Never mind with me with him. It's crazy. I'm sorry. But Joel Davis, who is a pretty good worker.
He's pretty good.
Yeah.
Joel is an interesting guy. I don't have too much bad to say about him, except when like I said, I worked with him a lot.
Right.
And the one thing is Joel wore glasses.
Okay.
And didn't have very good eyesight. So when Joel would stomp you, Joel would stomp your head in because he can't see very well. So, I mean, the thing about Joel was when you were working with him, you knew it was going to be a fight.
Right.
But other than that, I mean, I don't have too much bad to say about him.
No, he's definitely a scrapper, too, because I've seen him. He's had mixed martial arts fights.
Yeah.
He has, you know what I mean? And the first time I met him, he was awesome. I mean that. He couldn't have been, he was really cool. Second time, he was drunk. That's probably why it didn't go as well.
When he's drinking, he's a little bit of a different person.
Yeah, a little bit. And again, though, like I said, the first time I met him, he asked me why we never talked about it. It was because basically I had guys from right in this area. You know what I mean? And they really didn't work with Joel. But all right, so Joel Davis. Now, where did you first work with Joel? Was that in the South Coast? Did you work with him down there? Or?
Yeah, with Coastal Pro.
Yep.
And then a bunch of other, at the time, 93, 94, Bob Evans and I were trying to get booked everywhere we could. And we went all over New England. And so I ended up working with Joel a lot because Joel was in the Fall River, Rhode Island area.
Taunton. They used to run a lot of shows in Taunton, huh?
They did.
I didn't realize that until after, like just recently when I'm looking things up. A lot of shows were in Taunton. All right, so when you first started, we're going to just go through your career a little bit, then we'll play the name game.
Sure.
So you first started, you worked for Yankee Pro, then you went to Coastal Pro.
And
then you went to Jeff. After Jeff, where did you go?
Well, during Jeff, I also worked for Green Mountain Wrestling.
Okay, that's
for Gary Landry.
Yes.
Yep. Did a lot of work for him.
Right.
And then basically started just working random independents.
Okay. Yep.
Just I had stopped working for Jeff, and I was working just random independents, and then I went back and worked full time for Gary, basically.
Okay.
And Gary started doing TV.
Yes.
And we did it in Nashua.
I was going to bring that up, but go right ahead because I was at one of the TV tapes.
Oh, you were?
Yes.
So we did them in Nashua in this old karate dojo inside one of those buildings.
Yep. The warehouse building.
The warehouse, right. Where the school was on one side, and then we rented out the other place from the karate studio.
Okay.
And we would bring in, maybe 30, 40 people just to watch. Kind of, I loved it because it was kind of like, to me, like the old NWA days.
Right.
Watching it on TBS.
Yep.
The little studio.
Little studio wrestling.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's where I had the most fun. I was doing a gimmick, Wrong Way Johnny Royal.
Yep.
Where I'd worked with Aaron Morrison, and I'd been hit in the head way too many times. And I had so much fun. Tarzan and Julian asked me what was my favorite time. That was my favorite time because I got to really just open up and be hysterical to people.
Nice. I got yelled at by Scott Dickinson one time at the TV tapes. He had left, I guess he was thrown out of the building, supposedly, like on TV, for the wrestling show.
Right.
And then when he came back, I was like, I didn't even yell or anything. I was like, oh, you're back. He's like, shut the F up. I'm like, what did I do? I'm like, what did I do, dude? It was hilarious. Okay, so you work now. Gary, he did his TV down here, but did he run it? Did he run any other shows in Nashua?
No.
Did he just run them in Vermont?
Just ran them in upstate Vermont.
Wow. Now I don't think does anybody even run up there anymore. He doesn't still run, does he?
There's a guy named Rich Myers.
Okay.
that we rented the ring from, I believe, when we first went there in maybe 96.
Right.
And he had a bunch of guys with him that were honestly terrible.
Yep.
And I mean, I'm not saying that I was the greatest wrestler in the world, but these guys were just really bad.
Right.
And Richard apparently trained them all. And so Gary used them on the first show and then stopped using them right away.
Right.
And just rented the ring from Rich.
Yep.
And so as far as I understand, he's still running.
Oh, wow. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Maine's going crazy right now. Have you ever been out to a Limitless show up in Maine?
I haven't.
You should come with us sometime. I've only been to one. I shouldn't say I come with us like I go every time, but they're really good company. We should all go sometime. Sonny said that too one day. He's like, because I don't think Sonny's been up there. Big Scott does the commentary every once in a while.
Oh, really?
From, yeah. I really want to talk to you about your tag team with Rip, the Boston Bulldogs.
Boston Bulldogs.
Now, did you wrestle all over, like different indies as the Boston Bulldogs, or was that strictly just Jeff?
We did a couple of, we did Power League Wrestling.
Okay.
Couple other small ones.
Yep.
Just because we could.
Right.
Just because we were there.
Yeah.
But mostly it was for Jeff.
Now, Rip, one of the best guys around.
Absolutely.
I mean, I wasn't doing anything like this. I wasn't even really doing any catering, nothing. I was just a fan going to Jeff's shows, and Rip treated me like I was, like he knew me forever.
Right.
He's just that type of guy.
He is that type of guy.
And I heard you talk on the podcast saying freakish strong.
He is a freak.
Big neck. Thick neck.
Right.
Some people would say no neck.
No neck. Exactly.
But unfortunately, he moved to Florida. I really would have loved to have had him on this show.
Right.
Because he was just and everyone always talks highly of Rip.
Yes.
Do you have any funny Rip stories?
I have.
That you can tell?
I was going to say, I have plenty that I can't tell.
I'm sure of that.
But the first, and I told this on the podcast, but I'll tell you too, because it's a funny story.
Right.
We were doing Coastal Pro Wrestling, and Rip showed up for one of the shows, and it was in like mid-December. It was freezing outside, and Rip shows up wearing shorts, short shorts, a tank top, and a leather jacket with a mohawk. And I looked at him. I said, I got to know this guy.
Right.
And he turned out to be the greatest guy in the world. Just said, I want to do it.
Right.
And he ended up getting in, and we formed a tag team pretty quickly.
Nice.
And we did. That's where we did PAL. Rip and I worked at PAL together, and that was 93.
Nice.
And Rip and I just stayed together for the next like 3.5 years, and did almost exclusively tag team stuff.
Right. I'm pretty sure I saw you guys wrestle the Eliminators.
It was me and Bob Evans.
Oh, it was you and Bob.
Right, when I
that would have
turned
been
heel.
in Hudson.
In Hudson, right.
Not Rich's, Lions Club.
Lions Hall.
Lions Hall, yeah.
Yeah.
I got to bring this up, seeing your friends with Bob. The very first time I ever saw Bob, remember the gimmick he used to do? Centerfold. Remember when he did the centerfold Bob? And I thought it was the greatest thing, because here's a guy with the disposable camera as the centerfold. It was a great gimmick. He used to crack me up. And I'm almost positive, the first time I seen him, I saw Sonny also on that show.
Right.
And the announcer said, weighing in tonight at 318 pounds. And Sonny went over and said, 218.
Right.
So the guy says, 218. Of course, I yell, yeah, we're in the third grade. Sonny just gives me the dirty look. But so it was you and Bob versus the Eliminators.
The Eliminators, right.
And you told a nice, good story about how you had him on the ground. Perry Saturn.
Right.
Who literally, that's my favorite tag team, basically because they're local. You know what I mean?
Right.
I love the Freebirds, the Road Warriors, everybody. But the Eliminators ended up, if I had to pick one team to watch a match, matches of, it would be the Eliminators.
Right.
I know you talked about, Perry said, how was Cronus to work with? Because they say he was wacky.
He was weird.
Yeah.
But a nice enough guy. I mean, he wasn't mean to anybody.
Right.
Just kind of was off in his own world.
Yep.
Perry was really the one that was talking.
Right.
But he was fine in the ring. He was smooth.
Yeah.
Could do anything.
I unbelievable. The backhands and all that stuff that he could do was incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. All right. So what about at the end of your career? Let's go there for now.
Okay.
Who'd you wrestle last? Who was your last match with?
The last one I physically remember
Yeah.
is me and Aaron Morrison working with Sonny and his brother Jeff
Okay.
up in Vermont.
Yeah, and now who was his brother, Jeff?
A kid named Jeff DeLand, who's one of my good friends. I actually just talked to him the other day. He was a student of Jeff's as well.
Oh, okay.
And he just kind of, he was a great guy, super guy.
Right.
So we wanted to give him as much as we could and let him into everything that we were doing.
Right.
And but he was new, so he was learning at the time. So we tried to make the most of what he had.
Right.
And he did. He did a great job, I think.
Nice. Now, you brought up Aaron Morrison. He's another good worker. I mean,
Absolutely.
who's worked all over New England.
Right.
He's actually been a guest here, and he's going to be coming up again. I haven't set him the date yet, but we're going to set it back up for him to come back on.
Cool.
Great guy.
Yeah.
How long did you guys team up for?
Probably a year.
Oh, nice.
Probably like sometime in 2000 to 2001.
Yeah.
But super guy. And the gimmick that we did with me doing the crazy gimmick
Yeah.
and him being the straight man.
Right.
He was always constantly yelling at me, trying to keep me in line. And he just did a tremendous job at it. He knew what his role was
Yep.
in that team, and he did it to perfection. He really did.
That's awesome. All right. Is there anything you want to touch up on your career before we move on to the name game?
No.
You sure?
You've covered a good little bit.
All right. So we're just going to go through names that, like I said to you off air, that, you can tell me a story. You like them, you don't like it, whatever you want. If you don't really know them too well, we'll just pass. I got to bring up some of the guys that have been here as a guest on this show.
Sure.
Maverick Wild.
Maverick Wild is one of my best friends and is the greatest guy in the world.
Yep.
Will give you the shirt off his back. Got to work with him. One of my favorite matches was working with him for Jeff. I was working as Boink the Clown.
Yeah.
So wearing the exact suit and everything and the makeup, but Boink the Clown. So we didn't get a trademark.
Right.
And it put me in the main event with Maverick. Maverick was a champion at the time. And I had done some long matches in my life.
Right.
And we went out there and we were supposed to go about 20. We ended up doing a lot of gaga, a lot of funny stuff and playing with the crowd and working around.
Right.
And I was watching the clock and I knew we had gone about 20 already. And I said, I said to Maverick, it's time to go home. And he said, no, I haven't got my stuff in yet. He goes, now you're going to be the wrestling clown. And we went for another 25 minutes.
Wow.
So it was like we were way past when the place wanted to close.
Right.
So we kind of caught a little flack for that, but Maverick was so smooth in the ring and so caring of his opponent. He would take good care of everybody, and he was very concerned about the match. So it was always a pleasure to work with him.
Nice. A guy that I haven't brought up that often on here. He hit the Powerball. Jason Sanderson, Wolfman.
Wolfman. Love Wolfman. Really didn't have a lot of mobility in the ring, but he tried. The one thing I could say about him is he definitely put his effort in.
Right.
He really tried. I got to be tag team champions with him for Jeff, and it was an interesting time because Wolfman had a certain style. It was very slow and plodding and. Whereas I was still kind of, I was heavy at the time, but I was still moving. So it was really an interesting thing. But Wolfman is a great guy.
Yeah.
Can't say anything bad.
He really is. I mean, I'll just a real quick story with him is like my girlfriend's aunt passed away. He's like, he sends me a message. He's gonna say a prayer for her at his mass that weekend and stuff. Just a great guy. Really nice guy. Remember when he adopted the two boys?
Yes.
Who are now men now.
Now are adults, yeah.
Yeah. They would come by, look at the wrestling dolls when I was selling figures and stuff like that at Jeff shows, and I'd always give him one. He'd try to give me money. And I'd be like, nah, man, it's for the kids. Don't worry about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just a great guy. Sonny Goodspeed.
Sonny I put Sonny over once already.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
don't have to
need
put
to
him
put him
over
over again. I'll tell you a great story, and he's probably going to get mad at me for telling the story,
right.
but excuse me. Sonny and I were working at the beach, at Salisbury Beach, for Big City Mike.
Yep.
And Sonny and I were on opposite sides. I was the baby face at that time, and he was working heel. We did a match with me and Nikolai Volkov, who I was excited to get to team
Right.
with, against Sonny and Sergeant Muldoon, John Callahan.
Yep, Callahan.
So who I actually, when I first met him, recognized him from WWF TV from like the early 80s.
Right.
We did a match, and we're sitting in the back and talking everything over. And Sonny says, how's life, Sister Nikolai? How's life on the road? It must be tough. Do you get really tired when you drive? And he says, yeah. But when I get tired, I just get out and I do 500 squats. And Sonny says, wow, when I get tired, I just stop and get a big sub. And Nikolai lost it.
Right.
He just said, well, that's right, you're fat, blah, 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 blah. And Sonny was like, well, okay.
Right.
So we go to do the match. And Sonny's out there, and Nikolai, I tag Nikolai in, and Nikolai just proceeded to stiff Sonny like nobody's business.
Wow.
And it was funny to watch at the time.
Right. And you can laugh at it now.
I can laugh at it now.
Right.
But I was like, wow, he's really being a little stiff with him.
Yeah.
But that was one good story. Sonny was the greatest in the ring because Sonny had a natural ability, like I said, to piss people off.
Yep.
He really did. He was excellent at being a heel. And Sonny and I wrestled quite a few times.
Yeah.
And Sonny's big thing was he didn't like to call a lot of stuff.
Okay.
So we would usually work out something in the beginning and then the finish. And then the middle, we just do whatever. But Sonny had a knack for forgetting everything. I remember one time, you're good. I remember one time at Champs Arena in Salisbury Beach, I was working with him, and I took him to the corner. I said, all right, let's go home. And he goes, okay, what are we doing?
He forgot everything.
He forgot everything. And I had to tell him right, in the middle of the ring, I had to tell him. But it's like I said, Sonny, I'm putting you over. I told some bad stories, but I'm putting you over. Sonny was one of the greatest I've ever worked with. Right. Absolutely.
Were you there the night he wrestled Eric Watts? He told the story on him.
No, I wasn't, unfortunately.
All right, how about one of the craziest guys that we both probably have ever met, Kevin Butcher Hughes?
Oh, my Lord. Okay.
I'd love to have him on here.
Kevin, you would...
Good luck, right?
Good luck with that. Kevin is kind of a recluse,
Yeah.
He doesn't really have anything to do with us anymore. But Kevin is a plethora of stories. Just in the 5 years, that I hung out with him quite a bit.
Right.
The first time we met him was Jeff's first show. Jeff had called us. Jeff just wanted to get random guys because he only had Sonny and Donnie and a few other guys and Dave.
Right. Donnie, Cactus Donnie? Is that Donnie? Is it that Donnie?
Donnie, Congo.
Oh, okay, Congo. Okay.
Congo Donnie.
Okay. Yep.
And which is another, you can ask me about him too, and I'll tell you some good stories about him.
All right.
But he only had a couple of guys, so he called and got other guys. So he called me and Bob Evans, and we came down, and we, first show, it was just me and Bob working our match with each other. But come to find out that Kevin was in the back, and there was a guy named Bill Wilcox.
Flying Billy Wilcox.
Flying Bill Wilcox.
Yeah, from
right.
Nashua.
From Nashua.
Yep.
Good guy.
Yeah.
But he apparently wasn't happy with his pay and asked Jeff for more money. And Jeff said, you're going to get what you get, and that's it. But come to find out, Kevin was very protective of everything, and Kevin used to carry a gun with him.
Yes. Sonny told me that too.
Yeah. So that was interesting to learn. But Kevin Butcher would say whatever was on his mind whenever he thought it.
Yeah, no filter.
He had no filter.
Like a kid. Like little kids do
like
that
a
at my
little
school.
Kid. Like a little kid. We went to a Chinese restaurant once. The whole group of us.
Right.
Went to a Chinese restaurant after a show. And Kevin goes to order. And Kevin says, "I'd like some pork fried rice." Right? We were like, holy S.
Doing, dude?
Right to the waiter.
Yeah.
You know, it was stuff like that. He was a plethora of weird stuff.
Sonny told a story that they went up to Canada one time, and he said, when they got to the border, "Do you think they'll find my baby powder?" "You what?" "My baby powder. It's in a baggie." What? Just crazy stories. How about this guy? I know he didn't always work for Jeff, but he did work once in a while as a ring announcer. Mel Simmons. You know
Mel Simons?
Yeah, Mel Simons. Is it Simons?
Simons.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Mel. I thought it was Simmons.
I wish I could tell you some stories about him, but I never did anything with him.
Okay. We'll move right on. How about the Torch, Gary Cadelis?
Oh, my Lord. Gary Cadelis.
Great worker.
Great worker. Only worked for Jeff.
Yep.
Worked for Gary Linchman as well.
Oh,
sometime.
he did. Okay.
But one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Was always trying to please, you know, and did a good job.
Right.
I mean, he really caught on to the business quickly. And the torch gimmick, I mean, he worked babyface the whole time.
Yeah.
And he really got it. You know, he really got it. He was a little bit older than us.
Right.
But he was another one, you know, that just wanted to be there.
Right.
You know, and you could tell because he was really into it, you know.
I see him at Walmart once in a
At
while.
Walmart, yeah.
And didn't he wrestle Super Santo a couple times too?
At Super Santo, yeah.
Yes, I thought so. Okay. Iron Man Tim Walker.
Tim Walker, another great guy. Again, just a Jeff guy.
Right.
Was when I knew him, because I had stopped working for Jeff, you know, in 98, 99.
Okay.
So I only worked with Tim for a couple of years, but Tim was a great guy, super guy to get along with.
Yep.
But he was a rookie, but he was another guy like Gary Cadelis that would give his all and really wanted to be there, and you could just tell. Maverick Wild worked with him quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. How about Egghead? Because that was his name.
Egghead?
Right? Egghead.
Yep.
Yeah. What was his first name? I know him too. I haven't talked about him in a long time, but
I just know him as Panther Martin.
that's it. That was another one of his
Right.
names. That's right, Panther Martin.
I got to work with him. He was a good kid.
Yep.
But I worked with him in 2009.
Oh, okay.
And so I didn't get to see him in his basically his heyday
Right.
working with Jeff.
Yeah.
But he was a good guy. Good guy.
Okay. A guy you used to work with, and you also mentioned him you tried to use him as an answer for a two-time New England champion, Chad Thunderstorm.
Chad Thunderstorm.
I worked with Chad at Nashville High School South. He still works there now on second shift. I was his supervisor on third shift years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Chad was a good kid. Chad was, again, one of those guys that really could do anything.
Right.
You know, you ask him to do a moonsault, he can do it. You ask him to, you know, he used to do the thing where he'd go from the outside up to the second rope.
Right.
And cheer, which I thought was really impressive.
Yeah.
Chad did a rock takeoff for a little while. He enjoyed that because he loved the rock.
Right.
And he got to be the rock.
Yeah.
So it was really good. But a quick story about Chad.
Yeah.
Sonny again is the focal point of this story.
All right.
Chad had been in the business maybe 6-8 months at the time, and I was working with him, and this was in Peabody. And Sonny pulls Chad aside and says, listen, Rob, Johnny, my name's Rob, likes to work really, really stiff. So when you go out there, you lay everything in as hard as you can, because he wants it that way. So we go into the match and we start and fight. Chad hits me really hard with a punch, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever. He's, you know, I'm the type of guy that I'll go, if somebody hits me hard, you know, I go, it's all right, we can take
Right.
it. If it's 2 and 3 times, then I know something's wrong, and I give it back to them.
Yeah.
Because you always want to give somebody the benefit of the doubt that they
Right.
made a mistake. And then he bent me over and hit me in the back of the head so hard that I saw stars.
Wow.
And I had to roll out of the ring. I did the Terry Funk crawl and dive out of the ring, since I had to regain my thoughts. You know, I could barely move
Right.
from it. And I pulled him back in and I took him down and I said, "What is your problem? Why are you killing me?" And he said, "Well, Sonny told me to."
Wow, Sonny. I got to bring this guy up. I talk to him here and there on Facebook. Pinky Petunia. Jason
Pinky
Carter.
Petunia.
Yep.
Nice kid. I mean, I hate to not say anything bad about
Right.
anybody, but I don't really have anything bad to say about these people.
Right. No, I don't expect you to. You know what I mean? If you don't, I'd rather have you say the good things. If that's how you feel about them.
Pinky was a great kid.
Yes.
He was a kid.
Yep.
In his early 20s, and just came the gimmick Pinky Petunia. Jeff thought of it, but it fit him so well, and he played it so well.
Yeah.
And halfway through my time with Jeff decided that he wanted to make me a tag team partner of Pinky's.
Okay.
And this is a little bit of a longer story, but it involves Sonny again.
Yeah.
Because Sonny's my big.
It's like your big brother?
My big brother. And so I did a gimmick called the Red Rose. And I dressed up all in red and had a feather boa and did the thing. And I only did it a couple of times, and just because I didn't like the gimmick.
Yep.
But as it turned out, after it was done, I went, oh, that gimmick was kind of fun to play.
Right.
But we did some tag team matches, me and Pinky, and then we were going to have Pinky turn on me and move me back to babyface.
Right.
So Pinky turns on me, and I was going to get color for the turn. So Pinky hits me with the shot. I go down, and Sonny, who had made the blade for me, put the blade backwards. So I had the non-sharp end.
Right.
So I'm laying on the ground face down. I got my hands in my face, and I'm slicing, and I'm feeling for blood, and nothing's coming out. And I did it, honestly, way longer than I probably should have to make it look good.
Yeah.
And finally, I just said, I can't do it. I can't get anything to come out. So I just, we just ended it there, and I walked to the back. And I get to the back, and Jeff is going, "Why didn't you get color? You were supposed to get color. What happened?" And then Sonny pulled me aside. He said, "I just gave you the wrong side of the blade on purpose to see what would happen."
Oh, Sonny. Wow. That's unreal. And you're right, though. Jason's a good kid.
Jason is a great kid.
He's got some, he's got some problems. I talk to him here and there about things, like stuff that he puts out on Facebook, Great kid, though. I really like him a lot.
And like you said, yeah, he does. He has some issues.
Yeah.
But
he's a nice
kid.
Still
a great guy.
Yeah, he's not out to hurt anybody or anything
Not at all.
like that. You're right, not at all. All right, I'm going to go through some bigger names that I know you've probably at least been on shows with. Brickhouse Baker.
Never worked with Brickhouse Baker.
I'm
Never.
surprised. I know you worked with this guy, Scott Ashworth, and if you could do his an imitation of how he talks, that would be great.
I can't do an imitation of how Sonny can do an imitation of how he talks. I would, if I tried, I wouldn't do it justice. Right. But Scott was a guy who I had heard everything about. I'd heard that he's awesome, and I finally got to work with him. And I said, this guy can't be as good as everybody says he is. They got to be blowing him up.
Yeah.
So I get in, and he was as good as everybody said. Yeah. He was easy to work with.
Pro.
Yeah, very, very true.
All right. How about Big Rick Fuller?
Big Rick Fuller, never worked with him.
Okay.
I mean, did a million shows with him, but never got to work with him. So, and I wanted to, because I wanted to experience that job.
Right.
I was
crazy.
Yeah.
You wanted that job.
I wanted that job.
Oh, I can just feel it now after he's hitting somebody.
I know. I wanted to feel it.
Right.
But I never got to work with him. But was always very respectful of everybody.
Very nice guy.
Yeah.
Like, again, I mean, I'm not in the wrestling, but I've been around it, selling merchandise or doing whatever. And he always was just really nice to me. A lot of times I had my youngest daughter, who's now in college, with me, and he always treated he'd pick her up, stand her on a chair to get a good picture with her.
Right.
Instead of him bending down, he'd put her on a chair. It was great. Good stuff. And his wife is a very nice girl, too.
Very.
All right. Kyle and Matt Storm.
Kyle and Matt Storm. I'm not overly familiar with Kyle, but I know Matt very well. Matt's a great guy. Matt did a tag team called The Damned.
Yes.
With
Draven.
Draven.
Yeah, they were a good team.
They were a good team. Didn't work too often with Matt, but worked shows with him.
Right.
Always got along. We're Facebook friends. We talk every once in a while. Just a great guy.
Yeah, he is. Really great guy. How about this guy doesn't get mentioned enough on this show, and I think I could have swore he worked for Jeff a few times too. Kevin Landry.
Kevin Landry. Interesting guy.
Dude.
Big dude. Still running a school, I think.
Yeah, I
at
think
this
he
time
is. Yeah. Is that
in Connecticut.
Oh, it's in Connecticut. That's where it is. I'm sorry. Yep.
Yeah. But really was a guy who we thought at the time was going to make it.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he went nowhere.
Yeah.
All of a sudden he disappeared. So and I never heard from him again after he disappeared.
Yep.
But just a good worker, good kid, and should have been bigger than he was.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. Dave and Dean, the Power Company.
Rip and I worked with the Power Company quite a bit.
Twin brothers.
Twin brothers built like brick outhouses.
Yep.
And okay, I'll say something. They could not work at all.
No.
They really could not. They didn't get it. And
They had the look, though.
They had
That
the
was
look.
the thing.
They got to WCW on their look.
Yep.
That was it.
Right.
And WCW saw them in the ring and got rid of them right away.
Yep.
But it was always a struggle working with them.
Right.
To get something out of them.
One of the guys, this guy I'm going to bring up, a lot of people say he might have been the best worker to ever come out of New England that really didn't make it. Alex Arion, the Golden.
Oh, my gosh.
And I agree with a lot of people when they say that. Alex was incredible talent.
Alex was maybe one of the best I've ever seen.
Yep.
And if it were not for his height, and I'm not saying anything that he doesn't know.
Right.
If it wasn't for his height, he would have made it.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
He would have been 6'2". There's
if he
no
was
doubt in my
6'2",
mind.
he'd be one of the big superstars.
Yeah. I got to tell you a real quick funny thing. One time he was on the show with Jeff, and he was young. He was probably 22. I sent my son over to go get him. He brings him over to my merchandise table, and you know what I said to him? You're a good wrestler. That was it.
That was it?
When he walked away, I felt like such an idiot, All right. You brought this guy up on the podcast with Julian and Tarzan saying that you thought he would have went further. I feel the same way, and I love this guy, okay? It's my daughter Sarah's favorite wrestler, Slick Wagner Brown.
Slick Wagner Brown had every tool in the business. Came out. We did a SmackDown. Bob, Alex, Slick, and myself. Yep. We played cops, and Triple H's friends, and we held down the Undertaker and Kane, and it was a funny bit. But Slick took a boot from the Undertaker on that ramp.
Yeah.
I took a bump on the ramp too, but Slick took a tremendous bump on there, so hard that I thought he killed himself.
Right.
And he didn't. He was just excellent. And he put on more size, and I was like, wow, he's going somewhere.
Yeah.
And again, he never went anywhere. I just don't get it.
I think Ring of Honor dropped the ball with him when he was working for Ring of Honor.
Right.
They should have pushed him because he was over with the New England. He's over in New England.
Right.
And he would have gotten over even bigger if they would have just pushed him. It was a shame that they didn't. He's running Test of Strength out of Connecticut now, running his own shows, got a school. So he's doing fine. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I had to bring up Slick because, like I said, I heard you talk about it before. And again, I love Slick. I always have. How about Brian Fury? A little bit of controversy. We're not have to talk about anything that's gone on recently, but Brian Fury.
Brian Fury was starting when I was basically getting out of Jeff's.
Okay.
So I didn't get to work with him too much, but I mean, I've been friends with him for 20 years now.
Right.
And he's always been very respectful to me. When he was running Chaotic, he would always be happy to let me in and watch.
Great worker.
Hang out, super worker. Really, really came into his own. I mean, I watched some of the matches that he had in Chaotic, and I was super, super impressed with him.
Yeah.
I was like, because I remember him as a skinny rookie.
Right.
And then watching him as a man, just amazing.
He had a great match with Chris Hero for Beyond, and I don't know if you've ever been on Beyond shows, but you could get right up to the ring. I never liked doing that, but somebody had moved, and I just moved up, and it was Fury and Hero, and what a match that was. It was incredible, man. Brian's a great worker. Got a minute and a half. We'll try to get a couple more names in here. Doc Heresy.
Doc Heresy is the sweetest human being I've ever met. One of my good friends.
Yep.
We talk quite a bit. Just had a birthday the other day.
Looks fantastic.
Looks
Dropped a lot of
fantastic.
weight. Great job, Doc.
He's doing a really good job with that, and he should be proud of himself. Great worker. Did the Doc Harrison gimmick the whole time, and really understood how to work a gimmick.
Yeah.
Really. And I mean, I got to work with him. He did do one thing to me that we didn't like, but he didn't post up enough on a hip toss for me, and ended up tearing my rotator cuff.
That's
But
not good.
I still love him.
You're still all right. We got less about 45 seconds. I have to bring up this name. I told you off air couldn't have been nicer to me. The late great Nick Steele.
Nick Steele.
Let's end this on a note.
Nick Steele, one of the first guys I ever met in wrestling, and one of the best guys I ever met in wrestling.
Right.
He was maybe 16 or 17 when I first met him, and had already come into his own and knew what he was doing. And then we went off and did our own thing, with Coastal Pro Wrestling.
Right.
And I learned a lot from him. I worked with him quite a bit in the beginning and learned a lot from him. I can't say enough nice things about that guy. I really miss him.
And at the end, too, he was still training all these young kids and stuff. And he's left a lasting impression on a lot of people.
He really did.
And
Really.
I'm glad I brought him up at the end because, like I said, when I met him that one time with Sonny, he couldn't have treated me any better. The guy was great. Johnny, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks, man.
All right, guys, we'll do this again. Peace!
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.